When you finally let go, something important disappears from her world. Not only your texts, not only your attention, but the certainty that you would still be there. And that certainty matters more than most men realize. As long as a woman can still feel you chasing, explaining, or emotionally reaching for her, a part of her stays calm. Even if she is distant, confused, or cold, she still feels that the connection is not truly gone. In her mind, the door is still open. She believes she can step back toward you whenever she wants. And that is exactly why she often does not feel the full reality of losing you. Because the mind does not fully measure loss while access still feels available. But once you stop reaching, once you stop trying to convince her, once your energy is no longer pulling at her, everything changes. The silence begins to speak. Your absence becomes information. And suddenly, she is no longer responding to your pursuit. She is responding to the space where your pursuit used to be. That is where the real psychology begins. A woman does not always miss a man in the exact moment she walks away. Sometimes she feels it later, when everything gets quiet, when the conflict is over, when the emotional tension fades, when her pride settles down. That is when memory begins to shift. She no longer feels the pressure of the relationship, and instead she starts remembering the comfort, the attention, the emotional safety, and the familiar presence she once had. This is where many men misunderstand what happens after a breakup. She may not come back because she suddenly became sure about you. She may come back because she became unsure about losing you. She starts asking herself, is he actually moving on? Did I walk away from someone who truly cared for me? Why does his silence stay in my mind more than all his words ever did? Those questions often create more emotional movement than chasing ever could. Because chasing creates reassurance. Distance creates contrast, and contrast is powerful. When you were always there, your presence could become emotionally invisible. But once that presence is gone, the mind begins to notice the gap. She feels it in quiet evenings, hard days, lonely moments, and the times when she wants comfort, familiarity, or someone who once understood her deeply. But that does not always mean she is returning from pure love. Sometimes she comes back because she misses what you stabilized inside her. Sometimes she misses how valuable she felt when you cared. Sometimes she misses the version of herself that existed when your love reflected it back to her. And sometimes, if the emotional bond was never truly resolved, your distance activates the attachment she thought she had already left behind. That is why letting go can make her move. Not because silence is a trick. Not because you manipulated anything, but because your absence breaks a pattern her mind and body had become used to. And once that pattern breaks, reality hits differently. That is why exes often return with small signals first. A random message, a reaction to your post, a casual excuse to reconnect without sounding vulnerable. This is often not a full return. It is a quiet test. She is checking whether the emotional door is still unlocked. And this is where many men give away their position too quickly. The moment she reaches out, they rush back in. They over-explain. They reopen everything at once. They hand her the same emotional access she had before. And in doing so, they destroy the contrast that made her feel your absence in the first place. Because sometimes she comes back not because her love suddenly became deeper, but because your absence finally became real. And for many people, that reality hurts more than the breakup itself. But here is the part most men never notice. Just because she comes back, it does not mean she comes back with clarity. And that difference changes everything. So, if she comes back after you finally let go, do not confuse her movement with real meaning. Do not assume her return is the full truth before you understand what is actually pulling her back. Because sometimes a woman comes back not because she is ready to love in a healthier way, but because your absence touched something unresolved inside her. She felt the silence. She felt the loss of emotional access. She felt that the distance had become real. But the deeper lesson was never about making her return. It was about becoming the kind of man who no longer needs rejection to discover his worth. That is the real transformation. Because when you let go, you are not just leaving her emotional world. You are coming back to yourself. And maybe that is why she feels you again. Not because you chased more, not because you explained better, but because your energy stopped begging for love and started standing in self-respect. And whether she returns or not, that is where your power comes back. Because a man who has rebuilt himself is no longer waiting to be chosen. He is finally ready to choose. Why is it that she comes back only when you finally let go? Not when you were chasing her. Not when you were trying to explain everything. Not when you were still there, waiting. But the moment you become quiet, the moment you begin to heal, she suddenly feels the distance. And that feeling is not always love. Sometimes it is deeper psychology. Because when a woman senses that she no longer has the same emotional access to you, something inside her shifts. And what appears next can feel even stronger than missing you. It can feel like losing you for real. Most men think a woman comes back because she finally realizes what she lost. But that is only part of the story. In many cases, she does not react when you give more, explain more, or chase more. She reacts when your energy is gone. Because the moment you let go, the emotional balance changes. The certainty she once felt starts to fade. And that is when her mind may begin returning to doors she believed were already shut. Psychology shows us something most people miss. People do not always understand what they feel while they still believe they have full access to it. They understand it when the pattern changes. When a woman gets used to your attention, your presence can begin to feel permanent. But once that presence is gone, her mind starts noticing what it once took for granted. Not because absence is some kind of trick, but because distance creates contrast. And contrast makes emotional value easier to feel. That is why letting go does not always end the story. Sometimes it is the moment the story becomes real to her.